Every single year, more than 600,000 people die of heart disease in America alone. Not from accidents, not from cancer, from something growing silently inside their arteries while they go about their lives believing they are fine. And here is what nobody is telling you. In nearly 70% of those cases, the first warning sign was the heart attack itself. There was no chest pain the week before. There was no shortness of breath the month before. There was a man eating breakfast on a Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon, his family was making funeral arrangements. The arteries do not scream. They do not warn you. They harden, narrow, and clog over decades while you feel completely normal. And the moment you finally feel something is the moment it is almost too late. What most people believe causes this is wrong. What most people are doing to prevent it is wrong. And the one ancient seed that genuinely reverses the process is sitting in produce aisles being ignored by 95% of the population. Before I go any further, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel. It takes 5 seconds. We are working toward 500,000 subscribers because every person who joins makes it more likely that the next 60-year-old who needs this information actually finds it before their cardiologist hands them a stent. The healthcare system generates revenue from visits, procedures, and prescriptions, not from patients who solve their problems at home with the correct information. There is no billing code for what I am about to tell you. No clinic is going to walk you through this. And what I am about to tell you, no one in a waiting room is going to say. Now, picture this. It is 6:47 in the morning. You are sitting on the edge of the bed, and your chest feels heavy in a way that is hard to describe. Not pain, not exactly, just a pressure, a weight. Like someone placed a small book on your sternum and forgot to take it off. You stand up, and there is a brief flutter in your heart that lasts maybe 2 seconds. You tell yourself it is the coffee. You tell yourself it is stress. You took your blood pressure medication last night. You took the cholesterol pill the doctor prescribed 3 years ago. You stopped eating red meat. You started walking 3 times a week. You bought the fish oil. You bought the CoQ10. You bought the expensive bottled pomegranate juice from the health store because someone told you it was good for the heart. And yet here you are at 6:47 in the morning, feeling that weight on your chest, wondering quietly if today is the day. You climb a single flight of stairs, and you have to pause at the top. You bend down to tie your shoe, and you feel the blood pulse oddly behind your eyes. You go to your annual physical, and your doctor looks at the numbers and says everything is within range. Within range. And you walk out of that office with a creeping certainty that something is wrong, and no one is going to find it until it is too late. I see this in the eyes of hundreds of patients, and almost every one of them says the same thing. Doctor, I am doing everything right, and I still feel like a ticking clock. Let me be direct with you. The belief that cholesterol is the primary cause of arterial plaque is a lie. It is a dangerous illusion, and it needs to be shattered right now. Men come in and tell me their cholesterol is the problem. Women come in and tell me their cholesterol is the problem. They have been on statins for a decade. They have given up eggs, butter, and red meat. They have replaced everything with seed oils and processed substitutes. And their arteries are still hardening. The plaque is still building. Why? Because they were fighting the symptom, not the cause. Cholesterol does not damage healthy arteries. Damaged arteries trap cholesterol. That is a completely different problem with a completely different solution. Think of a screen door with a small tear in the mesh. Dust does not cause the tear. The tear catches the dust. You can dust the room every day for the rest of your life, and the screen will keep collecting debris until you fix the tear. Your artery wall is the sensor. It is signaling that something is happening at the cellular level. The problem is not the cholesterol floating in your blood. The problem is the inflammatory injury to the artery wall itself, and almost no one is treating that. Before we go further, I need to say something as a physician with over 20 years of clinical experience. There are symptoms that should send you straight to a doctor, not to a video. If you have crushing chest pain that radiates into your left arm, your jaw, or your back, call emergency services immediately. If you have sudden shortness of breath that comes on without exertion, paired with a cold sweat or sudden nausea, do not wait. If you have moments where one side of your face droops, or your speech slurs, or one arm goes weak even briefly, that is a stroke warning and you have minutes, not hours. None of those symptoms are things you sit at home and watch a video about. If none of those apply to you, you can breathe. You are going to be fine, but the quality of that life is worth protecting. Now let me tell you what is actually happening inside your arteries right now. Your arteries are not pipes. That is the first lie. They are living, breathing tissues with a delicate inner lining called the endothelium, which is a single layer of cells thinner than a sheet of paper that controls everything about how your blood flows. Every artery in your body has this lining. And this lining produces a molecule called nitric oxide, a tiny gas molecule that signals the artery to relax, widen, and stay smooth. When nitric oxide production is healthy, your arteries are flexible, your blood pressure stays balanced, and plaque cannot anchor itself to the wall. When nitric oxide production fails, the arteries stiffen, blood pressure climbs, and the inner lining becomes sticky enough for fats and inflammatory cells to bind and form plaque. This is called endothelial dysfunction, the breakdown of the inner artery lining, and it is the true beginning of every cardiovascular event you have ever heard about. I want to be precise about this. Plaque does not appear out of nowhere. It begins with a microscopic injury to the endothelium. Once injured, the artery wall recruits white blood cells called macrophages, which are immune cells designed to clean up damage. And these macrophages begin engulfing oxidized cholesterol particles. Once they are full, they become foam cells. Foam cells stack on top of one another. They harden, they calcify, and over 10, 20, 30 years, that microscopic injury becomes a plaque that narrows the artery to the point where blood can barely squeeze through. That is atherosclerosis. That is what is silently happening inside the arteries of nearly every adult over 50 in this country right now. And here is where it gets critical. I need you to pay close attention. Researchers at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology, one of the most respected cardiovascular research centers in the world, ran a clinical trial on patients with severe carotid artery stenosis, which is dangerous narrowing of the arteries that feed the brain. The patients consumed pomegranate juice rich in compounds called Punicalagins for 12 months. Punicalagins are a class of polyphenol, which is a plant-based antioxidant compound, and they are unique to pomegranates. Nothing else in the plant kingdom produces them in this concentration. After 1 year, the data showed that arterial plaque thickness was reduced by approximately 30%. Systolic blood pressure dropped meaningfully, and the endothelium, that delicate inner lining we just talked about, began producing nitric oxide at higher levels than before the trial began. That is not a small finding. That is a complete reversal of a process medicine has spent 60 years calling permanent. Punicalagins do something almost no other compound on Earth does. They penetrate the endothelial layer. They neutralize the oxidative stress inside the artery wall. They prevent LDL cholesterol from oxidizing in the first place, which means the macrophages have nothing to engulf, which means foam cells never form, which means new plaque has nowhere to anchor. And on the existing plaque already present in the artery, punicalagins activate enzymes that slowly dissolve the foam cell layer and recruit healthy endothelial cells to rebuild the wall underneath. Your body is not designed to live with arterial plaque forever. It is designed to repair. But it cannot repair without the raw materials, and punicalagins are one of the most powerful raw materials ever discovered for this exact process. Think of a wall in an old house with layers of dirt and grime caked onto it. You can paint over it. That is what most cardiovascular drugs do. Or you can apply a solvent that lifts the grime off and exposes the original wall underneath, and then you let the wall breathe and repair. That is what punicalagins do. Your artery is the wall. The plaque is the grime, and the seed sitting in your produce aisle right now is the solvent. I want to tell you about one of my patients. I will call him Mihai, 64 years old, retired electrical engineer from a small town in Pennsylvania, originally from Romania. Not someone who complains easily, only comes to see a doctor when he is past the point of managing. And he was past that point. He came into my office with a carotid artery scan showing 52% stenosis on the left side. His cardiologist had already scheduled him for a procedure. His blood pressure was 162/96, despite 3 medications. His LDL cholesterol was 178. He told me he had given up on feeling well. His exact words were, "Doctor, I am tired of swallowing pills that do nothing." I asked him a question that surprised him. I asked him what he ate for breakfast every morning of his childhood in Romania. He paused for a moment, and then he smiled. He told me his grandmother grew pomegranates in her garden, and from October through January, she would crack one open every morning and split the seeds between him and his sister. He had not eaten a fresh pomegranate in over 30 years. I told him I wanted him to do one thing: eat 1 tablespoon of fresh pomegranate seeds every single morning. Nothing else changed. Same medications, same diet otherwise, same exercise routine. 6 weeks later, he came back and his blood pressure was 138/84. 3 months later, his LDL had dropped to 142 without a change in his statin dose. At his 6-month follow-up scan, the carotid stenosis had decreased from 52% to 41%. His cardiologist called me and asked what I had done. I told her the truth. A spoonful of seeds, that was it. Mihai's case is not unusual. It is exactly what the Israeli data predicted, and it is exactly what your body is capable of if you give it the right material. But here is the part that genuinely matters, and the part that gets nearly everyone wrong. Bottled pomegranate juice does not work. I want to say that again because the bottled juice industry has spent millions convincing you otherwise. Bottled pomegranate juice loses up to 80% of its punicalagins during pasteurization, processing, and storage. The heat treatment required to make juice shelf-stable destroys the very molecule responsible for the cardiovascular benefit. What you are buying in those expensive bottles is sugar water with a marketing budget. The same applies to pomegranate supplements in capsule form, which lose potency the moment they are extracted from the fresh fruit. The polyphenols in pomegranate are stable inside the seed, surrounded by the juice sac, protected by the fruit's natural matrix. The moment you break that matrix and expose the compounds to oxygen, light, and heat, they begin degrading rapidly. This is why fresh pomegranate seeds dramatically outperform every processed version. The whole seed, eaten fresh, delivers the punicalagins in their most bioactive form, alongside the fiber, the natural sugars in their original cellular envelope, and the trace minerals that support absorption. What comes next is the part nobody in a waiting room is ever going to explain. There are foods you eat thinking you are protecting your heart that are actively damaging your endothelium. The first is industrial seed oil, which is found in nearly every restaurant meal, every packaged snack, and most processed salad dressings. Soybean oil, corn oil, and canola oil are unstable at high heat, and they generate compounds called aldehydes, which are toxic byproducts that directly injure the endothelium with every meal. The second is hidden sugar in foods marketed as healthy. Granola, flavored yogurt, dried fruit with added sugar, breakfast cereals labeled as heart-healthy. Excess sugar in the bloodstream causes a process called glycation, which is when sugar molecules bind to proteins in the artery wall and stiffen them permanently. The third, and this one surprises people, is excess fruit juice. Even pure 100% orange juice spikes blood sugar fast enough to trigger an inflammatory response in already damaged arteries. Eat the whole orange. Drink water. Write this down somewhere you will see it. Now, here is the most important thing I want you to hear right now. Here is the protocol I built for my patients over 20 years of clinical practice. I call it the 21-day cardiovascular reset. Part 1. Morning. The Punicalagin window. Within 30 minutes of waking, before coffee, before breakfast, you eat 1 full tablespoon of fresh pomegranate seeds, which is roughly half of a fresh pomegranate. You eat them slowly, you chew them completely, and you let the natural compounds enter your bloodstream on an empty stomach when absorption is at its peak. The reason this timing works is that your endothelium is most receptive to repair signaling in the first hours after waking, when cortisol is elevated and inflammatory pathways are most active. Hitting them with punicalagins at this exact window calms the inflammation before it cascades through the rest of the day. Part 2. Mid-morning. The nitric oxide boost. 15 minutes of brisk walking, enough to bring your heart rate up, but not enough to leave you breathless. The mechanical movement of blood flowing faster through your arteries triggers shear stress on the endothelial wall, and shear stress is the single strongest natural signal for nitric oxide production. The walk itself does not have to be long. The first 3 to 5 minutes are where the metabolic shift begins. Part 3. Evening, the inflammation cool down. 1 hour before bed, no food, no screens, no stress. A glass of warm water with the juice of half a lemon. The lemon delivers vitamin C, which is a cofactor your body needs to stabilize the collagen in the artery wall. Without vitamin C, the artery wall cannot rebuild itself no matter how many polyphenols you consume. Part 4. The daily removal. Every day for 21 days, you remove 3 things from your diet completely: industrial seed oils, added sugars in processed forms, and any fruit juice that is not freshly squeezed in front of you. You do not need to eliminate these forever, but for these 21 days, you give your endothelium an environment without ongoing injury so the repair can begin. Part 5. The tracking. Once a week, you take your blood pressure at the same time of day, in the same position, after sitting still for 5 minutes. You write the number down. You do not adjust anything based on a single reading, but over 21 days, you will watch a trend appear, and that trend is your endothelium telling you it is healing. Mihai followed this protocol for 21 days. After the first week, he came in and said quietly, almost not believing himself, "Doctor, I climbed 2 flights of stairs without stopping." After the full 21 days, his blood pressure was stable in the 130s without medication adjustment. After 3 months, his cardiologist canceled the procedure. After 6 months, his carotid scan was nearly clean. How old are you? Write it in the comments. I want to see which age group makes up the majority of our viewers, because it will directly shape what I cover in future videos. Here is exactly what to do after watching this. Step 1. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, eat 1 tablespoon of fresh pomegranate seeds on an empty stomach. Step 2. Walk for 15 minutes within 2 hours of eating those seeds. Step 3. Remove industrial seed oils, processed sugar, and bottled fruit juice from your kitchen this week. Step 4. Drink warm lemon water 1 hour before bed every night for the next 21 days. Step 5. Track your blood pressure once a week and watch what your endothelium tells you over time. Your doctor is not going to walk you through this at your next appointment. There is no revenue in it, and there is no time on a 12-minute office visit to explain endothelial repair, polyphenol absorption windows, and a difference between fresh pomegranate seeds and bottled juice. I am Dr. Candace Miller, and I have spent over 2 decades in practice watching what happens when people treat the symptom instead of the cause. Most of the time, the damage was entirely preventable. The protocol I just described requires no prescription, no procedure, no money beyond the cost of 1 fresh pomegranate per week. It requires only the understanding of how your body actually works and the discipline to use that knowledge. Subscribe to Dr. Candace, hit the like button, and help us reach 500,000 subscribers. Every person who subscribes makes it more likely that the next person who needs this information actually finds it. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine.